The question is the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Dunkley.
Thank you, Speaker. As we move through the health crisis caused by coronavirus and we turn our attention to the recession that we are now living through, many people are talking about the economy, and that's right, we must address the economy. But we have more than an opportunity here to rebuild Australia's economy. We have an opportunity to think about the sort of community we want to be. Do we want to be a community where people are connected to each other? Do we want to be a community where it doesn't matter how much you earn or where you live or what your circumstances are, there are supports there for you to get through the difficult times? Do we want a community where loneliness is hardly experienced, or do we want a community that is measured in terms of how much you earn, how well the economy tracks, and what your social status is? In my community, we understand and we're working very hard to build connectedness. One thing that the social isolation of coronavirus has taught all of us is that social isolation and mental health problems go hand in hand. And we've heard research by places like the Black Dog Institute which talk about those people who were more vulnerable to mental health crises during coronavirus isolation being those who already had pre-existing anxiety, people who are healthcare workers on the front line of dealing with a crisis, people who are experiencing quarantine, so more isolated, and unemployed, underemployed and casual workers, people who already have insecurity in their lives. I would add to that, the experience in Dunkley is that young people are feeling the strain of coronavirus, because for many young people, and by young people I mean anything from the ages of toddlers all the way up to mid-20s, their social connectedness has been disturbed over these last few months. School-age children haven't been able to go to school. People whose world revolves around sport and who thought it was because of the competition and the game haven't been able to go to their club, and they've learnt that their world revolves around sport in a great part because of the people that are there at the club when they go. I was at the Langwarrin Football Netball Club last week for their first training session, talking to the committee members and the players, and to a person, man and woman, they talked about how amazing it was to be back with their fellow club members. They really wanted the season to start, but predominantly they were just so happy to be back in a place where they felt secure, where they have friends and where they aren't isolated and they aren't lonely. We've got a project called Project O in Frankston North, which is working with young women who come from disadvantage and are vulnerable to mental health issues and domestic violence, which is all about empowering those young women to keep them together. And they've been working to have digital connectedness. But it's hard because not everyone can afford or has access to the sort of internet that we need to have digital connectedness, and then to access the sort of services that we've heard about the government has supported, telehealth and Beyond Blue online. They're terrific, but if you don't have a computer, you don't have an iPad, you don't have the wherewithal or the means to be able to afford the data to get onto the internet, then you can't access those. So we need to think about what sort of community we want to be as we move forward. Headspace in Frankston currently has a waiting list of 150 young people for counselling, and the wait time is 4 to 6 months. I met with Headspace last week in Frankston because a constituent had contacted me about his young son, who he's very worried about, who has lost his social connectedness, and was told it was a 6-month wait, and he thought that that couldn't be right. And unfortunately, it is right. And we can address this in two ways, and we must. One is the funding for our services. The other is to ask ourselves, what sort of community do we want to be? Why is it that 150 young people are in a waiting list for counselling? And there's many, many things we have to address. But as we look to how we're going to build back better, not snap back, not just recover, but build back better, ask ourselves, what sort of a community do we want to be? Well, I know that I want, and my community wants, to be more connected. to be stronger and to get through it genuinely together with community groups, not just words.